So, Doug, when you're doing your artwork and you're listening to podcasts mostly. Sorry, I didn't specify which Doug Fuller, Doug Fuller. You're listening to podcasts. What podcasts do you like to listen to?
Well, really what I do is I have these AirPods that don't fit in my ears well enough, and they're always falling out. So I spend more of my time just like picking them up and trying to keep them out of the disgusting cat box. Podcasts. I listen to a lot of like NPR spin-off type stuff.
Yeah,
Oh God, Fresh Air and Mark Maron,
yeah.
WTF. I listen, mostly that type of stuff. Doug, you weren't on here yet, but had trouble sleeping last night, so I put in a podcast and I was listening to it. There's a movie reviewing podcast called Rewatchables, where they take a movie that's like a movie that you'll like watch anytime it comes on. You'll rewatch it, and they talk for like 2 hours about it. But they happened to talk about Brokeback Mountain, and I had never seen it, but I know it's about. But they talked about how sad, and I woke up in the morning just with this feeling of dread, like this feeling of like sadness in my life. Like all day long, I was just like, "Oh God,
Oh,
I feel so
Not
bad."
a good podcast to listen to at bedtime, I guess.
No, no, definitely not. So I listen to those. Plus, I listen to Tolkien podcasts. I listen to a J.R.R. Tolkien Lord of the Rings podcast.
Podcasts or like books on tape?
Podcasts. There's this one couple of different groups that do these long. They go on super nerdy podcasts. So
yeah. It seeps into your
yeah.
your dreams. I was telling him that I woke up in the middle of the night, and a lot of times I'll pop in mine and I'll listen to podcasts. And last night I was listening to, I think it's called Three Bean Salad, or it ran into, I was listening to one that was just kind of just this pop culture talk. And because it's just voices to me, I'm not really taking it in, but it ran into the Three Bean Salad, and there's like three of these British guys talking, and it totally bled into my dreams. And in my dreams, Hugh Grant was talking to me with one of the voices, but I'm like, but you don't sound like Hugh Grant. So it was very funny. Well, I thought it was funny. Yeah. So anyway, back to art. Just want to talk about like who inspired you guys as artists, or who continues to inspire you.
I can start. I started art late in life. I had always liked art. In my adult life, I've really been interested in seeing and taking in art. Sort of developed a particular taste toward more modern art, to some extent, probably more abstract type art. But before I started doing any art, which was, like I said, about 6-7 years ago, the two artists that I had seen and come to know that probably ended up really being the inspiration for me even to think about wanting to try making art were Robert Rauschenberg and Joseph Cornell. Rauschenberg more for his sort of boldness and experimentation, innovation. He kind of would work with, he's made art out of basically just about anything you can think of. And he's pioneered a lot of techniques and processes that were, his work was appealing to me aesthetically, but then, in terms of what he achieved as an artist was pretty monumental in terms of just the scope of it all. So that he was one. And then Joseph Cornell made shadow boxes, was kind of the thing that at least the main thing from his art that I got really interested in, where he would sort of create these, you could call them assemblages, but he was using found objects as well as collage, and then having these boxes that he made to sort of be the frame, and then he would assemble these things in these very dreamlike, mysterious sorts of poetic constructions. And so those were my initial influences. And then, I actually, before I even started collage, in a very unserious, unstructured way, I tried my hand at making shadow boxes, what Joseph Cornell made, my own take on that. And I did that for a number of years, probably going back 15 plus years. But it was sort of one here, one there. And I wasn't really working at a discipline in terms of thinking through, trying to get better with composition and kind of more core things. So they're a little, I look at them now and they look kind of goofy to me. But there was already there. That was the beginning of me, having that desire to create. Then I guess as I've moved from collage into mixed media and painting more, I've been looking at a lot of the like abstract expressionists, mainly, people like de Kooning and Robert Motherwell, Richard Diebenkorn.
What about you, Mr. DePuller?
I have said this on previous occasions, but I do find my brother Doug very inspiring, and not only for his cool studio, but what he's been able to create and how he's been able to kind of change his style of work, and the fact that he's untrained as an artist. He's kind of self-taught. Would you agree with that, Doug?
100%. Yeah.
He's kind of taken it upon himself to teach himself art, and he knows so much more than I do. So I find him very inspiring. For people who are no longer alive, it would have to be Duchamp and Man Ray. They're probably my favorite artists of all. Just though I'm guessing based on their background, I probably wouldn't understand a thing. Their stuff would probably just go right over my head. But I would like to at least try to figure out if we could communicate through art. I think that'd be cool. I love those two guys.
Well, thank you for the kind words, Doug. You're an influence on me as well. I was digging back more to the early ones, but
you didn't want me to think that I was
co-inspired.
Well, it's fun. We had the one kind of workshop or just art session, and it was just nice that you guys were kind of feeding off each other and looking at what the other was doing and stuff like that. So I definitely see the mutual appreciation and the synergy between you guys. So
you can send the check to my home address, Doug.
Well, we've talked about collaborating a few times. I still want to do that. We just need to work out what we would want to create. I think our work would pair up pretty nicely. We just have to figure out what kind of rules of engagement we want to have for a collaboration. But I think it'd be a lot of fun. We'll eventually get there.